Hi everyone, welcome back to my bookish corner. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to discuss the books I read while I was in Florida and what I thought of them. Then we're going to update my bullet journal reading log and tracker because I haven't done that since before we left for Florida, so there are quite a few books that need to go in there. And then we'll talk about my April TBR and figure out what I'm going to be reading in April. But first, grab a drink and get cozy. Cheers. I have an oat milk caramel latte with oat milk cold I can talk. Oat milk cold foam, which I wanted to show you guys before I mixed it in because it's just so pretty. Aldi recently got, actually I don't know if it's recently, maybe I just haven't seen it, but I recently saw that Aldi has oat milk cold foam and I had to get it and try it, and I think it just makes the iced latte a little bit more special when you make it at home. So that's what I've got. I'd love to hear what you're drinking. Let me know. The first book I read was On the Flight to Florida, and that was Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers, which is actually, I was trying to go for one-off books, but this is part of a series. Like, the end of this book wasn't a cliffhanger, so you could just read the one. I'm still deciding whether I think I'm gonna want to read more, but it is part of the Lord Peter Wimsey mysteries. So this is definitely a mystery book. On the back it says fiction/mystery detective. It feels very Sherlock Holmesy, and this was published in 1923 for the first time. So older language, a little bit longer to get through it and truly understand it than, say, if we were reading a modern novel. But I find it really fun. I like that language. I like when a book feels a little bit more challenging and a little bit more engaging in that way. Learning new vocabulary, figuring out what words mean, that kind of thing. I really enjoy that. So I liked that part of it. I definitely figured out the culprit like halfway through the book, and that made the rest go really slowly for me because I like it when there are some twists and turns that I'm not expecting, and especially in a mystery. It feels like if I'm reading a mystery, I want to not know what's coming next, and I felt like I really had this figured out halfway through. This is the first Lord Peter Wimsey book, I think. I think it's the introduction of the character, and so I'm wondering if maybe some of the others are a little more fast-paced. They might have a little bit more character development for the main characters. I did really enjoy the actual characters. I think it was just a little bit slower for me because I figured it out. I do also watch a lot of like detective shows and crime shows, and once you watch a lot and read a lot of those kinds of things, I think it can become easier to pick out the patterns, and then it makes it a little easier to solve them, so I may have just done that to myself. I would say this would probably be a like 3.5, 3.75 out of 5. I did really enjoy the writing, really enjoyed the characters, just moved a little slowly for me. Then I read The Paper Girl of Paris by Jordan Taylor. This was a straight 3 stars for me. I did enjoy the book and I thought it was interesting. I really enjoy the time period that she was writing about. This is set in France during World War II. So, well, kind of. Half of the book is set in France in World War II. Half of the book is set in, this was published in 2020, so about France and, not quite 2020, because that was COVID and there's no COVID in this book. So, I would say probably France in like 2019. The present day, she is from America but traveling to France. The past, she is from France. So I do like the duality of it. I like seeing the differences in present day and the past. I like reading about that time period. I think it's very interesting. I think it's very important to read all, this is purely fiction, but I think it's important to remember and pay attention and kind of just keep that kind of history at the forefront of our minds. And sometimes I think historical fiction is a good way to do that. So I really value that. I would say this is definitely a teen novel, and I think especially over the course of reading a lot of these, I am realizing that I have aged out a little bit of teen novels. I don't relate as much to characters that have to ask their parents for permission or are sneaking around behind their parents' back. That just throws me off a little bit from relating to characters. So I think it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to really get into the story. I did really enjoy this. It had an unexpected ending and I thought that it was really well done. There was kind of a weird scene with alcohol that felt a little forced. I'm not entirely... I think I can see where she was trying to go with it, but I think that it could have been done a different way. It could have been done a little more tastefully, I would say. But yeah, I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I would recommend reading it. I think it was a pretty easy read in terms of language and vocabulary. I think that the plot is valuable and it was an interesting story. Easy to stay invested and keep going. The next one I read was also a dual timeline. So this is The Lost Jewels by Kirsty Manning. And I think this one was a straight 3 out of 5, maybe like a 3.25 out of 5, I'd say. This book was published in 2020 as well. And this one, there was a present day storyline and then there was London in the 1900s, early 1900s. I really enjoyed this storyline. I didn't fall in love as much with especially the present day characters. I definitely was more invested in the characters from the 1900s, which is kind of funny to me because I feel like it should be easier to relate to present day characters, but somehow my heartstrings are definitely tugged more by historical characters. So I enjoyed that part of it the most. It's hard with standalone novels because it feels like some things don't get as fleshed out as they could be. And there are definitely some tangents or relationships or pieces that I wish I would have seen more of. So that, I think, was part of what was difficult for me with the book. It was definitely an easier read in terms of language. There were some confusing parts, like I couldn't really understand what the main character's job was for quite a bit, because I couldn't tell if she was a journalist or a historian or some combination of both, which I think I ended up going with some combination of both. That was a little difficult to figure out, and that was a pretty big part of this story, so that left me confused for a little bit in the beginning. Otherwise, very interesting, good, easy read. Yeah, I would read more by this author. The next one I read was Wild and Distant Seas. This would probably be a 3.7 out of 5. It would be the closest I would have gotten to a 4. This book is loosely inspired by Moby Dick. So the main character in the very beginning has an interaction with one of the characters in Moby Dick. No spoilers, I won't say any more than that. We follow 4 generations, so it starts with Evangeline, follows her daughter, her granddaughter, and then her great-granddaughter. Each storyline ends with the birth of the next daughter. So I thought that it was a very interesting concept, very interesting story. I really enjoyed the writing. It was engaging and well written, very descriptive language, which I love. I struggled with the fact that there were 4 generations, so 4 different main characters. It felt like each main character changed a lot between their story and then them as a mother, which I totally believe that motherhood can change a person and that people change over time, absolutely. But it felt like the jump was really big, and that sometimes the character as presented in their own storyline had an entirely different personality in the storyline of the daughter, and I wish that there had just been a little more crossover to make it feel like we were still continuing the story of each mother with the daughter so that we could stay engaged with the characters. Because it's such a small book, I didn't feel like I got to know the characters as well as I would have wanted, because we had 4 main characters in such a small period of time, and because then it felt like each mother changed when the daughter arrived. And so there was this disconnected feeling where it felt like almost a new book every time we had a new main character. And I think that's why I didn't give this 4 stars, because there was a pretty disjointed feel. It did all come around in the end, and I like the way she tied it up. But yeah, the disjointed feel throughout the book made it a little bit more difficult for me to stay engaged. The next one I read was The Messy Lives of Book People. This is by Phaedra Patrick. This one is set in about present day, I would say. It is published in 2022. So pretty recent, present day. This book is about a cleaning lady. She cleans for her favorite author, and then her favorite author unexpectedly dies, and her, like, last wish, I guess, is that this cleaning lady finishes her book for her. I thought that it was going somewhere that I don't like. There are very certain tropes in books that if they happen, I will stop the book in the middle and will not finish it. I really thought that this was heading toward one of them that would have been really disappointing, but it actually pulled it out, and I appreciated the way that it resolved the issues that were presented, because it didn't fall into the tropes that I hate, and instead it felt really thought-provoking. So I did really enjoy that. The plotline felt really far-fetched, which, yes, it's fiction. It's a book. Of course these things would never happen in real life. It seems to almost try to present itself as a down-to-earth, real-life kind of book in a way, but it definitely doesn't come across as that. So if you don't go in expecting that, I think it's very interesting. It's a fun story, and I appreciate the character growth, and I appreciate the way that it was ended. I gave it a solid 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Depths by Nicole L'Esperance. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. But this one was published in 2022. I actually got this in Owlcrate a few years ago. This one is set in present day, but is definitely completely fictional fantasy. So this one is about a teenager. She is a free diver and gets into a free diving accident where she dies for 8 minutes. And basically she's brought on her mom's honeymoon with her new stepdad because they don't want to leave her alone. She's still recovering, so she's brought to this really remote island. The island has some really strange things about it that she kind of starts to discover as she's there. This was a 3 out of 5 as well for me, but I did really enjoy the concept. I think, again, this was a reaffirmation that teen main characters are not as relatable for me and are not as fun for me to read anymore. So if you have any recommendations of books with 20-something main characters, fantasy, realistic fiction, whatever, I'm open to all of it. But books with older main characters that are more in, like, my current stage of life, like the early 20s, mid-20s, that kind of area, that would be so great. I have tried to look for some of those types of books, but I'm having a hard time finding them. But there's this theme of woe is me to her kind of character, which big accident is a big deal, and I totally get it. But there's a conflicting, she's saying a lot that she doesn't want to ruin this honeymoon for her mom. She wants her mom to have a good time. But then she has a terrible attitude about everything, and a terrible attitude with her mom and her stepdad, and is super snarky in a lot of ways to both of them. So that was difficult for me. It didn't feel necessary to the plotline or the story. It felt like it didn't flow. It didn't fit in with the story. It wasn't necessary, and it made me not like the character as much. So that's kind of why this one got a lower rating. Then I read The Luminaries, which was also an Owlcrate book from a few years ago that had just been sitting on my shelf. This is by Susan Dennard. This was published in 2022. I think I also gave this one a 3 out of 5. This one also has teen main characters. I think that was pretty much the theme of what I was getting from Owlcrate, was a lot of teen books. The Luminaries is also full-on fantasy. It follows a set of people basically protecting the world from these nightmares. There are like 14 nightmares around the globe, and each one has a set of, or a clan, I think, of luminaries that protects the surrounding area from the nightmares. We follow a main character who has been cast out of the luminaries because of something her dad did. So their whole family has been cast out because their dad was labeled as a traitor. The dad is no longer in the picture, he's gone. She decides to take the trial to become a hunter without any training or anything like that. Each clan is named after a day, and her name is Winnie Wednesday. So everyone in the Wednesday clan basically has the last name Wednesday. I don't know. I see Wednesday, I think Wednesday Addams. I feel like a different clan just would have been better. It was definitely interesting. I thought it was going to be more trial based than it was. There were only like 3 trials, and they were significantly less part of the plot of the book than I thought they were going to be, which was a little disappointing to me because I do really love trial based books. So I was a little sad about that. They definitely feel like there could have been more inventive trials or more unique trials, and it felt like it went pretty quickly. This was book 1 in a series, which I did not realize. I thought that it was a standalone, but it is book 1 in a series, so I do think I would read book 2 if I had time. It wouldn't be at top of my list. The next book I actually haven't finished yet. I'm pretty close. I was reading this on the flight on the way home. So this is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I think this would be my first 4-star. It is shaping up to be a 4-star. Obviously, endings are really important. So it'll depend on how it ends. I'm excited to finish it. I just have to find some time where I'm not doing homework or trying to keep up with the house to finish it. So I will let you know my thoughts on the ending as soon as I finish this one. I started Liar's Beach and I got like maybe 2 or 3 chapters in and decided to set it aside. It was based on like following some really rich teens on their summer vacation. I was not really interested in reading about more teenagers, and especially that kind of vibe was not what I was looking for while I was on vacation. So I ended up putting that one down, which is funny because that's the first one I added to my to read list for vacation because it's about a beach. But it ended up not being really what I thought it was going to be. So that is all the books I read on vacation. Definitely a large theme of 3 out of 5s. They were good for vacation, easy reads, quick to get through. It was fun. I read about a book every day, and that was just really fun because I feel like I was in a slump before vacation, and I was doing so much homework that I just didn't have time to read. And so it was really great to feel that I just got to cycle through a bunch of books and get a lot of story. I haven't had a lot of story lately, and I love story. So that was a blast. And I'm so glad that I got to read so much on vacation. It's such a vibe to just sit next to the pool or the ocean and read a book. So now we're going to update my bullet journal because that hasn't happened in a while, and as you can see, it needs to be. So we're gonna go do that, and then we'll talk about my April TBR. One of my goals this year is to read through all of the books on my bookshelf that I either haven't read or read a very long time ago and don't really have a good record of reading or don't really remember reading. So for my April TBR, I'm just pulling off of my bookshelf, not buying anything new, just reading what I already have. I do have some newer books that I got over Christmas as gifts or from gift cards, but a lot of them are series, and I don't really want to start a brand new series right now that I don't have everything of. So I'm just sticking with what is already on my shelf. So first, we have The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, which I got a very little bit into, it looks like, but it was a very long time ago. because I had this color post-it notes a long time ago, probably at least 3-4 years ago. And that was also around when I was drawing these like silver flowery things. So I'll be starting from the beginning for that one. I also grabbed the Whispering Dark, which is one of the Owl Crate books that I got when I was doing that. The inside cover sounds really familiar, but it also sounds a lot like Ninth House, and I'm not sure if I've read this one or not. I really can't tell. So I am going to read this or reread it if I have already read it, and we will see how that goes. It will probably also be very teenager, so it should be fine. I'll survive. Then I grabbed Persuasion, which I have definitely read so many times. Also have tried to take this sticker off, and it leaves like the residue stuff, so I guess that's just gonna stay on, but whatever. I will reread this till the end of days. I love this book. It is my favorite book by Jane Austen, so I thought that this would be fun to kind of slip in for a little bit of fun, a little bit familiar, and then I'll actually have a record of when I read it, even though I've read it probably 3 or 4 times already. Then the last thing, because I'm trying not to overload in my goals for this month, since this is also a pretty big school month, I have the Shadow and Bone series, which I have read all of the Six of Crows, I've read the Six of Crows duology, but I started Shadow and Bone and didn't like the main character, and so I didn't finish it, and I only watched the TV series. I have heard that the books are a lot better than the TV series from people who read the books first. So I'm gonna try them again and try to go in with an open mind without anything from the TV series in my head. So I really liked Six of Crows. I think I liked the heist aspects of it. So we will see how I feel about these 3, since they're a lot more fantasy, a lot less heist. That's 6 books. I know a couple of them are pretty little, but that's all I'm gonna do in terms of goals. If I end up reading more, that's great. But I, again, don't want to overload myself with classes and homework and assignments and all of that, plus work, and then our schedule for April is really filling up, so it's likely that I won't have a ton of time to read, but that's my April TBR, and we will see if I can get through it. That is everything I have for books right now. Thank you for coming along and talking through all of the books with me. I would love to hear what you plan to read in April, so let me know what your TBR looks like, and I will talk to you later. Bye!